Om brothers, I'm the KBH. This is Uncle Jeebers. I want to be talking about the Apollo hoax and its influence on mankind in the present age. And for this video, I think we can leave most of the arguments about why it was a hoax aside. I can put forth the basic arguments from a scientific perspective. I come from a scientific family. My father, my mother, my sister are all engineers, and my father does robotics. My sister was she did the ABS system for BMW, and she designs for Apple. My mother is a inventor and a scientist who works for the EPA. She's an official in the U.S. government, and they could all tell you about engineering, and there's a long process of engineering to make something work, and there are several major issues with putting any life form even through the Van Allen belts that have not been addressed by the Apollo program, and there has never been anything with life that has ever gone into the Van Allen belts and come back alive. They also say that the rocket went up, and then when it got to the moon, it went down. That's a trick. Can we take a long thing that looks like a ballistic missile? Can we turn that around and make that land on the ground safely, or at least that part of it? That was never engineered. We still cannot do that today. NASA has a real science program, and they're still working on shielding radiation, and it's a complex issue. And it's the director of NASA, his name is Daniel something. He said, well, nothing living could ever get through the Van Allen belts. That's why we're doing all this research. And he didn't remember that he's supposed to be upholding this Apollo lie. And the Apollo lie, like a lot of the other hoaxes, are just looking more and more ridiculous as time goes on. So you're telling me we can't go to the moon today. We don't have colonies there. We're not playing golf and running around on buggies on the moon when they were doing it in 1969. They're like, well, it's too expensive. We have a hell of a lot more money, power, technology. Technology is several millions times cheaper when you look at the power of computing and such. They say they went to the moon on a 32K computer. That's the computing power of a digital watch, people. So, lead acid batteries, no toilets. I guess the astronauts say that, well, I took a poo or a pee in their books, but it's, where did you do that? You could go to the Smithsonian. They say these are the real suits, this is the real ship, and there's no toilet, and there's no plate, in the suits either. So there's all kinds of endless problems. Could we engineer how to take film pictures? How could you take film through Van Allen belts and beyond? Beyond Van Allen belts is also a huge radiation problem, but of a different type. And so recommended reading would be Ralph Renee's NASA Mooned America, and you get the general idea of why it's not just a hoax, but it's a very funny one, until you realize that it gave a lot of people an extreme faith in science and technology that's not realistic. And it's not funny when you see how they steal so much money, and what they're really doing is developing weapons. And this pushes a button with me because I'm a peace activist, and if you want to make intercontinental ballistic missiles like the Apollo program did, than just say that's what you're doing. Don't, dress it up as some big science program. The moon rocks are a joke. They say, oh, this Texas lady, I found moon rocks in Antarctica. And then Wernher von Braun went to Antarctica for an expedition before Apollo. Yep, got to pick up those rocks and say they're from the moon. And then they gave a rock to the Dutch government, and you could read this online anywhere you want. It's been confirmed. They gave the Dutch government a petrified rock, petrified wood, and said that was a moon rock. And I don't want to go too much into fake photos because you can't take photos under those radiation and temperature conditions with cellulose or and silver film. You can't do that. So the pictures can't exist in the first place. They must have been taken on the Earth because you're using an Earth technology to take these photos. Now, this throws question on all of this space stuff as a method of laundering money for purposes which common people can't understand. I don't live on the moon. I can't see what's going on the moon. I don't know what's going on there. So they could say they went and then take 10% of my income, which is what happened with the Apollo program, and then use that as an excuse to launder money, steal money from people. And it's pretty similar to, you have these international hoaxsters, people who go from one country to the other, and because people in one country can't easily translate into the other country, and there's money being exchanged and stuff. This is why most of the U.S. government's white budget is, international aid, international programs, because Americans can't go check and see if that money was properly spent, and they don't speak the languages, and they can't check and see if it's true or not. So that's a major reason why they want to say, well, we're out in space doing all this stuff with space, and it's so important, because you can't check. Well, most people can't check. Now, you can go check the surface of the moon in detail in Australia. I don't know if it's in Brisbane or not. They have a setup where you could see that very, very clearly, and any member of the public can go look, and there's nothing on there. The recent reports from the U.S. saying, oh, we found some of our stuff on the moon, contradicts a report from the Japanese government 3 years ago that they said they looked and there's nothing on there. And it also contradicts science, because if there was something on there, it should have been smothered, blasted in the smithereens by something called micrometeorites. Extreme temperature changes from 200 over, 200 under Celsius, they would just crack and smash everything into bits. Micrometeorites alone would blow a table on the moon into bits in 10 minutes. This is scientific fact. Why does the moon look like, Swiss cheese? It doesn't look like that because it's got an air atmosphere that protects it, and then you can just go up there and play golf and do what you want as you please. It's ridiculous. The whole moon mission thing is ridiculous. It's a ridiculous lie, and none of the engineering necessary to make that possible is even possible. But NASA, I think, has a real science program, that they're making some progress in some things, and I think it's for weapons, and it's not really for any kind of space exploration. This throws doubt onto all the space things that they're doing, and I think this explains why a big Indian guru, when this is recounted in a book that Brother Julian has, and somebody asked him, well, what about advances in technology? What about the probe going to Mars? And the guru just started laughing uncontrollably for 10 minutes, and he couldn't stop laughing. And then when he was done laughing, after 10 minutes, he just took the next question. And that's what I think the gap between these modern science wanker atheists is, and meditator yogis like us at the KBH. It's the gap of understanding and the perspective on the world is just that much different. And I want to propose that, we have more life, we have, clearer eyes, brighter voices, better health, and people like Stephen Hawking, there's the bundle of, damaged nerves curled up in a chair, who they can't speak for themselves, or some computer translating what he's saying, and all these wanker atheists look like they're gay, they look like they're unhealthy, they're not, I don't think they're living in a state of bliss and enlightenment. They don't look like it, they don't talk like it, and their religion is this materialism, and they think spiritual stuff or interesting stuff just pops up out of dead stuff, and the dead stuff controls the live stuff, and dead things cause what live things do. And this is an inversion of yin-yang binary theory, the general dualistic presentation of the world that most of us yogis are operating on. And so I don't think the pictures from Mars are real either. These really, these sheeple looking at these pictures from Mars, they find a guy in the picture, they say, "Look, an alien!" Don't be stupid. That's a guy who's on Earth, and they're taking the pictures in the Australian desert. Wake up! It's a money laundering scheme. They're not doing anything for us. They're just stealing more of our tax money. None of this stuff they keep talking about in Scientific American or Popular Science and all that other stuff is ever going to come to be. Freaking flying cars, the cure for AIDS, they're cloning monkey brains and stuff. I've been seeing this since I was, 5 or 10 years old. It never stops. And none of this stuff ever happens. They're not going to save the world with technology like Zeitgeist says. They're not going to invent some machine that makes our life happier, like Woody Allen says, some orgasmatron. You walk in and you have some mind-blowing, literally, experience. That's not going to happen. That's not how bliss, God knowledge, enlightenment happens. People on this atheist masturbation trip, most of them are going to believe Apollo and make up the dumbest excuses you would never even imagine for this insanely hilarious and tragic hoax that we call Apollo. And finally, I want to recommend, there are 3 major directors and film analysts that are out there explaining why The Shining is the confession of Stanley Kubrick, that he filmed these fake moon landings in 1969 alongside the studios of his film 2001 Space Odyssey. We have high-resolution photos of him with Stanley Clark and high-level NASA officials in meetings around the film studios, and he wanted to announce that he was the director of this. I think on the anniversary of Apollo, he announced that he would announce something very interesting, and the day before he did that, he was killed. I don't miss him all that much. I think he was a bad man in many ways, and karma is nasty. And I think he probably wanted to tell us he did Apollo because he was trying to brag about it. It was a vanity thing. But nevertheless, check out these websites, documentaries. If you're interested in something, it's like a big puzzle. Some funny, interesting dualist, worldly stuff to pay attention to if you're not meditating and reading your books on Krishna's pastimes or other religious literature. Thank you very much, everybody.